Welcome to the NCDWI Guy podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the NCDWI Guy, Jake Minnick.
Hello, fellow freedom fighters, and welcome to episode 131 of the NCDWI Guy. On today's episode, we have a very special guest, Allison Williams, on the podcast. Allison, known as the law firm mentor, is the owner of two successful companies. She is founder of Williams Law Group, a full-service family law firm, where she is a fellow of the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, is certified by the New Jersey Supreme Court as matrimony law attorney, and is certified by the National Board of Trial Advocacy and Family Law. After taking Williams Law Group from startup to a multi-million-dollar business in 3.5 years, she created a second business, Law Firm Mentor, where she provides business coaching services for solo and small law firm attorneys, helping them grow their revenues, crush chaos in business, and make more money. This business was born out of her success in business, including winning the Law Firm 500 award, ranking 14th of the fastest growing law firms in the nation, being named a Stevie Award finalist for Female Entrepreneur of the Year in 2017 and in 2018, being voted as NJ Biz's top 50 women in business and designated one of the top 25 leading women entrepreneurs and business owners. The motto of her firm, which I love, the motto of Law Firm Mentor, is never stop growing. Looking forward to sharing this conversation that I had with Allison with you all. Allison, I'm very excited to have you on the podcast. Thanks very much for coming and sharing with the audience.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be with you guys.
Tell the audience maybe just a little bit kind of about what sparked this interest in creating the Law Firm Mentor model. You know, you're running this successful practice. You know, there's not necessarily any reason to divert your attention. What was it that was kind of the draw into this, wanting to help other attorneys grow their practices?
Yeah. So as you noted, I own a law firm. I own the Williams Law Group in Short Hills, New Jersey, and a very rapid ascent. It took us 3.5 years to get to a multiple 7-figure company. And by that
That's
time,
crazy.
I really had nothing left to do. I have wonderful attorneys. I mentor my attorneys, and I still very much enjoy that work, but I wasn't necessary for the day-to-day. And honestly, I started hanging out on social media, encountered a whole host of lawyers that had assembled themselves into Facebook groups around the topics of business.
Yes.
And that was one of my passion projects. So I started just kind of being around lawyers, and I realized that there was a real deficit in the marketplace of people that could facilitate one's growth and development through coaching, but also give them concrete answers in a way that people could actually use. And so I started kind of ad hoc coaching people in the Facebook groups, and I had been a coaching client for many, many years, and I had had a lot of experience with taking someone from an idea into a change of thought, and actually being able to utilize the strategies that I'd be inclined to share with them. And so just through doing that, I decided I would launch the Law Firm Mentor and actually do that as a business. And January of 2018, the very first day of the year, January 1st, I rolled over and said, all right, I'm going to do this, and just created a Facebook page and kind of spent the year figuring out what I wanted it to look like, and then launched our first annual program in 2019. And here we are, also a multiple 7-figure company in 3 years.
That's amazing.
That's kind of my punchline now. I'm like, all right, the next time I create a business, I'm going to grow it to 7 figures in less than 3 years.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, it's super cool because I'm sure as you've worked with clients and trying to help pinpoint what stands in the way of growth, what's kind of blocking development, you see probably a lot of trends or similar kind of issues. So, I'm going maybe a little bit off script of what, maybe I thought we might discuss for just a minute, but I'm just kind of curious based on, the clients that you've been able to help, what have been some of the recurring pressure points of firms that are looking to kind of take, or firm owners, maybe it's a solo practitioner that's kind of just looking to take it to that next level.
Yeah. So, I mean, I love that question. So there's a lot of things that we tend to see over and over and over again, right? The one thing that is almost universal is that lawyers have a hard time getting themselves out of the mindset that they have to be the solution, right?
It's so hard. Yeah.
It's like we just kind of believe it's a team of one.
I'm the best.
Right. I'm the one who has to do everything. I have to answer the phones. I have to service the clients. I have to be in court. I have to be the one negotiating. I have to be the one drafting documents and all of the stuff. And very quickly we tap out on the amount of time, but more importantly, we tap out on the amount of mental space.
Yes.
And that is very much what we focus on here at Law Firm Mentor, is giving you back that mental space, not just by giving you time because you're delegating to other people, but systematizing everything so that you're not spending your mental energy on figuring out who moved my cheese. You're on to the next activity because it's at a level of automaticity. And you have to build that into the structure of everything you do in a business, from your marketing to your selling, to your hiring, to your actual legal service, so that the time that is needed for your thought, right? The actual coming up with a strategy, advising a client, dealing with an adversary, all of those things that are higher level, higher skills that we are, I don't want to say taught in law school, because we all know that we don't get taught much in law school, but you have to do as a practicing attorney, right? And that's probably the greatest area where lawyers really, really struggle. And the next one is dealing with marketing. And it always surprised me the number of lawyers that would say, I want to grow my business to X dollars. And they honestly believe that all that they had to do is hire a marketing company, pay X dollars, and they would magically have leads appear.
Right.
And what I tell people is that a marketing company is marketing an asset, and you are the asset. So if you don't have anything for them to market, yes, they can put fluffy words that they've copied and pasted and finagled from someone else's website. They can absolutely drive people to a shell of content, but that content needs to emanate from someplace, and it needs to speak to someone, your ideal client avatar, if you want that content to land in a way that people are actually going to buy you. And so you have to have something for them to market. That usually means you need to have created some content. That content doesn't have to be hard to create. I tell people all the time, just go give a consultation to someone and record yourself.
Right.
And then take that content and snip it into small pieces so that you can give it over to someone in your voice with your stance that can then be utilized in some form of marketing, whether it's on a website or on your social media or on a blog. You have to do something with what you are in order that people can learn you and consume you. And the number of lawyers that will do anything and everything else, right? They're more than willing to sit for hours trying to teach a paralegal a new trick rather than spend an hour of time dissecting and taking content and cultivating it in a way that sounds user-friendly to the marketplace. It's astounding to me. So that's probably the next thing that really, really jars us and stops us from growing. And then the final thing that I'd say is probably the major point that people get to at some point that really stops them from growing is the hiring piece. Right? Right now, huge. We keep hearing about the Great Resignation, but whether you believe that to be indicative of what's happening in the legal industry or simply a more generic explication in society that doesn't really hit us as hard, because there's some evidence that it's more localized in hospitality and food services and things like that. Whether it's hitting you hard now or not, ultimately hiring is a challenge. And it's a challenge because for a lot of us, we have an almost Pollyanna view of people that if someone says they're able to do X, all I have to do is take them at face value, give them a manual, and set them free, and they should be fine. But there's a lot that goes into someone demonstrating for you that they actually can do the job that you want them to do. that they can likely do it in the way that matters to you, that they have the attitude, the aptitude, and the fit for the role that you are placing them into in your company. And if you don't understand how to engineer a system around that, it's a hodgepodge crapshoot as to whether or not you get someone who's going to be a rock star, or you get somebody who's going to be America's next top project that you're going to have to replace next year.
Yeah, that's so critical. I think all three of those kind of open up some additional questions. So I'll kind of, just dive into the system side of things first, as you're trying to help lawyers that come and say, hey, I need to grow. And you tell them, look, you need more time. To get more time, you've got to have system in place so that you don't have to repetitively kind of create this stuff in and out every day. You can pass this along to somebody else. What are the systems that you have found to kind of be the most important, kind of at that like beginning stage of things? Are there particular systems where it's like these are the three that we start with, or this is the number one thing that we have to systematize first? I'm sure that probably depends a little bit on practice area and that type of thing, but what is kind of the focus in terms of systematizing the business?
Yeah. So the first thing I always look for when someone comes to us is kind of what they have already. Most lawyers will instinctually go to systematizing the practice, so that they don't miss statutes.
Practice management system. It's already built in for you.
Right. So they don't miss any deadlines. So they make sure that they have their clients' data maintained. Most lawyers get that part, right? The next critical piece is always going to depend on what you have to deliver and to the marketplace what you are delivering. So for a lot of people, that deals with their communication systems, i.e., how are you communicating to your clients to either call you more or call you less, depending on your practice model? How are you making sure that things are running smoothly in your office, i.e., that you're delivering the service that you offered to the marketplace at the rate at which you offered it, consistently collecting money? And then from there, it really is variable based on where people have actually started to create systems. Because if you're selling something like a flat fee traffic ticket, then more likely than not, you don't have a collections issue, right? So you're not going to be somebody who's going to spend a lot of time collecting AR. But if you're in a law firm where you deliver a service where it's hourly billing, you have a retainer, people have to replenish retainers, you can run through them very quickly. When you start talking about practice areas where you're dealing with litigation, there's a little bit more flex, and you're not really sure if this is going to be a $10,000 case or a $200,000 case, depending on how complex the issues are, how unreasonable the client is, and so forth. Then you have more to deal with on the financial side. But money is probably the greatest barrier for people in terms of staying in business, because that's the area that causes, for a lot of us, the most stress, right? If you don't understand your numbers coming in, what's coming in from a revenue perspective, what's going out from an expense perspective, what of your expenses is truly an investment that's going to give you a return that you're going to measure, and from your profit, how much of that is allocated to you versus allocated to growth in the future. If you don't build out a model for that early on in the process, then what tends to happen is you spend money as you need it, and you go into what I refer to as bank account accounting, right? If I have money in the bank, I'm doing good. If I don't have money in the bank, I'm not doing good, right? That's kind of the answer, until you realize, well, not having money in the bank may mean you're going to get payments coming in a relatively short period of time. Having money in the bank could mean nothing, because it's all going to go out before the end of the week. So having to deal with that is the area that I say a lot of lawyers, if they don't systematize it soon enough, they lose the opportunity for traction, and they cause themselves more stress than they can withstand while they are growing a business. So they ultimately don't grow a business because they assume more money, more problems, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think, having the systems, particularly on like the front end of things, you've got you tend to spend, like you said, the vast majority of time, like thinking through the case management process, right? Like how are we going to get, kind of retained client to, final outcome in court, or to final document prepared, whatever it might be. But I noticed that you all have courses on your website for intake, making sure that the intake process is very sound, and for sales, if you want to call it that, which makes a lot of lawyers uncomfortable. We don't like to use like the sales thought process in terms of getting potential client to actually get on board so we can help them. But in terms of kind of those processes, what places do you see kind of the most missing for attorneys in terms of like either the intake process or kind of answering client concerns or sales, so that you can get clients to that call you to retain you? What are some of the big barriers on that front?
Yeah. So, I mean, the kind of, you put those two together quite beautifully. And I think it really speaks to what the problem is for a lot of lawyers, which is we don't see consultations as sales. So we
Right.
see it as, we're kind of taught the binary in this profession, quite unfortunately, that there are professionals and then there are salespeople,
Right.
and nary the two shall meet.
Right.
And so you go in thinking that if I'm trying to sell someone, that I'm inherently doing something antithetical to my ethics. I'm not being a good professional, and I'm prioritizing myself over someone else. And the reality is, selling is very much an act of service. You're doing something for another person when you're helping them see their way to solve their problem. And if you know that you have the solution, then you're benefiting them by offering it to them at whatever price is appropriate to offer it. So
100%.
that mindset has to be woven into all of the sales process, which includes intake, selling on the phone, and the actual consultation process, which is selling the actual service. And so I see a lot of the mindset being just kind of an order-taking attitude that really has to shift in order to make some pretty significant changes relatively easy. By way of example, we actually had a client that went through our intake mastery class. And when he came in, he has an intake person. And we have a whole portion in the intake mastery course that's just for you to give to your staff so that they learn how to use a script, they learn how to change their languaging, they learn how to actually have a sales conversation from that call. But he was having a hard time translating it to the staff person because he hadn't actually put her in the class. He had just he had taken it himself so he could understand it and see if it was a resource he would use. And at some point he realized, okay, she's not getting there fast enough. Should I let this person go? And I said, well, how long have you been allowing her and facilitating her working with the content? He said, oh, well, I gave it to her like on Monday. And this was on Friday. Right? I gave it to her on Monday and, she doesn't seem to get it. And I said, okay, well, wait. I want you to explain to me in your words, what is a properly high conversion intake funnel? And how are you going to facilitate the highest number of people scheduling consultations in your office? And he literally just kind of looked at me like I had two heads. And I said, well, this is the purpose of the course. If you're in week 3 and you can't explain that to me, how do you expect that you could explain it to this other person? Yeah. Right. And then, of course, we went kind of through some of the basics of, do you have the right person, right? Do you have that personable, inquisitive employee who is able to have an engaging conversation with someone that doesn't feel like a sales call, right, that feels like you are a caring, compassionate person, understanding their problem, helping them get to a solution and getting them there as quickly as possible. You might not have the right person, but ultimately the mindset is really what educates, do I need to change the person or not? Or is it just kind of, I can check the boxes and go through the process? And then once you get over to the consultation side, that's really where the lawyers really struggle, because it's usually a lawyer, even though there are some law firms that have a non-attorney selling legal services. Whoever is selling the service, that person has to recognize you're not there to kind of get the story as to what happened and then say, okay, well, we got a solution that'll be $10,000, please. You're there to facilitate that person moving from a lack of awareness that there is a solution to a desire for that solution, to an increasing urgency for that solution, to the point where they recognize that you are the one facilitating that solution. They're writing you into the story of the solution, and they're getting to yes on their own. And if you don't learn how to do that effectively, you tend to talk too much instead of asking questions. You tend to stop someone from coming to a conclusion on their own. You try to ram down their throat that you have the best name, rank, and serial number for them. You audition for them with your degrees and your knowledge of the judge and your your so eloquent prose that you're going to be able to convincingly get that jury to give them what they want. But ultimately, that's selling you. People don't give a shit about you.
Yeah, that's true.
People
That's so
want
true.
what they want for themselves. And if you don't help them see that, you're a question mark, unless they were already sold on you before they got there. So that's really your marketing piece, right? You want people bought into you before you get there. But you can have somebody who doesn't know anything about you. And if you have a powerful enough sales conversation, the sales conversation will sell itself. You don't have to sell, right? You're facilitating. And people don't understand that. So that's oftentimes where law firm owners in particular will get kind of hung up on can I just tell them I know statute number XYZ and I know the judge and this is how this is going to play itself out. And then they should write me a check for X dollars. And I'm like, that's not how humans work. That's not how psychology works. You have to work the system the way that it is designed as people. And once you learn how to do that, it becomes very easy to increase your conversion rate, which is, by the way, the fastest way to make more money in business. Just get better at selling the people you already see, rather than try to go out and buy yourself more leads into the top of the funnel that are going to reduce and reduce and reduce before they even get to you.
Yeah, I think something that's really critical about both of those pieces is that the way that you're teaching these, this idea of sales being this kind of like greasy used car salesperson that is trying to get you to buy something that you don't need is not the answer. It's all about, basically showing how you can help with the solution. And that, I think, is why there's a lot of a misperception among the bar, definitely among the public as well still, but certainly among the bar of that term sales, is because there's still this idea that I'm trying to get you to kind of get into a contract that you don't need. Whereas real sales is all about, telling the story of how you can help the client achieve best possible outcome on their own case. And like you said, you're not the hero of your client's story. They're the hero. You're just there to help them achieve that kind of best possible outcome. So I love that kind of model of teaching, both in the intake side of things. Again, we're not selling anything. We're just, having a friendly conversation and kind of making the process to get to consultation as easy as possible. And then consultation, whether that's by attorney or somebody else at the firm, is listening first and then offering solutions second. It's not about kind of explaining yourself into a contract. It's all about listening first. So I love that model. And again, I think it's important for lawyers to in particular kind of see what real sales looks like, to see what really helping people looks like, because that is something that because we don't talk about it at all in law school, there's a just giant misperception on that front.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think there's also something to be said for how easy it is to make small shifts rather than completely break the mold.
Right.
So ironically, Law Firm Mentor has a retreat coming up in November in New Orleans, and it's dedicated to the topic of legal sales. And one of my clients, she's in our mastermind, so she already has a 7-figure company, but she's been with us for just over 2 years now. And one of the things that we explore with her a lot is how to take what's already working and just shift it, right? Just pivot it a little bit, because I think so many times people say, what I'm doing is not working. And then we give them a new framework and it's almost like then nothing works, because you're so busy trying to fit yourself into completely new ideas that you don't really continue to work with what already works. So at one point she went to our first legal sales retreat after she came into the company, and she did a testimonial for us saying the very next week I converted 3 people, right? I met with 3 people, all of them converted. I didn't expect that I was going to sell any of them, and this is amazing. And then probably 4 months later, she's reaching out. We have our own app, right? So she's reaching out to the coach team on the app, and she's like, oh my God, I haven't sold a client in almost 3 weeks. I don't know what's happening. So we hopped on a call with her and just kind of calmed her down a little bit and said, well, what's going on? And it was all about, well, I asked this question this way, and then the person said this, and then I asked this next question, but I think I said too much. And I said, you're thinking way too much. Stop being a lawyer. just stop lawyering for a minute, right? And we had to kind of reset her. And just that little shift, I remember it was a conversation. It was her and me and our finance coach. And we just kind of said, like, just your debrief is exhausting me, and I'm just listening to the ex post facto, right? Take the prospect into that mishigash and imagine how you are exhausting them. Just stop for a second. Go back to being you. If I hadn't taught you anything about how to sell, what would you do? Well, I'd find out what the nature of the problem is. Great. You're selling them an estate plan. What else would you do? Well, I'd find out some very basic data about what there is in the estate. Okay, great. What else would you do? And we continued down that process. And I said, okay, now I just want you to shift that a little bit, right? Instead of asking for data, I want you to, while asking for data, ask what it would mean to the person to protect whatever it is that you have found out that they have that is causing them to seek an estate plan. So if the person says, all right, I got a house. All right, great. Tell me about the house. Well, it's got a mortgage. And I'm like, no. Tell me about why this house is something that you want to protect. Why does that matter to you?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, I want to have this passed down to my kids. Oh, you got kids. All right. Tell me, how many kids do you have? What are their names? All right. We're going to get to all of the kids later, but I just want to understand the house for a minute, right? Let's stay with why it is important to you to ensure that this house passes on to your children. And it's a very, very small shift, right? It isn't like, okay, now I got to follow the agenda. I've got to move myself into the script of asking the right questions in the right way. That comes naturally when you understand that the purpose is driven by finding out what the person wants and giving it to them. That's all that you're doing in a sales conversation. And by the way, this is a client that came to us and started out as a $300,000 law firm and struggling. And she is now well over $1 million in 2 years because she learned how to listen and apply what was already common sense knowledge, right? She was already a good attorney. She already had some things built out. It took listening and tweaking and continue to come back to the well to say, how can I get better at this? Just a little bit better. Not how can I gut everything I'm doing and start over, but how can I improve upon what's here? And most lawyers don't realize how easy it is to grow, how much easier it is to simply take what is already working, even if it's working marginally well, and improve upon it rather than try to beat yourself into submission to do something completely different and think that you're somehow going to arrive at some success that you're not entitled to until you're a completely different person. That's not how we grow. We grow from where we are.
Yeah, I love that. And I think just that small shift that you were describing is so powerful. I think one of the things that, I've experienced from clients that have called other firms or have dealt with a lawyer in the past is they will call up almost like with like a verbal diarrhea, like just trying to get their story out as quickly as possible, just so that, something can stick. And as soon as they're like, oh, wait, you're going to actually listen to this whole thing. It's like, there's this total calm that comes over and you start to build in that connection because now they're like, oh, I don't have to like kind of, worry about not having something understood because this thing is important to me. I want my whole story to be told, but I've been cut off or, I haven't felt like in the past that I've had enough time to get my story out there. So that model that you're teaching is actually really like taking that one step further. It's not only do I have enough time to talk about your legal matter, but I have enough time to talk about your life. Like, tell me why, tell me what's really kind of going wrong in life. And I think for most people, the legal issue, again, whatever it is on paper or at the courthouse, that is very surface area, for the larger problem that is kind of looming deep underneath. It's very much just scratching the surface to kind of get into that legal issue. And so I think that's one of the easiest ways to build trust quickly with a potential client on an initial phone call is really to kind of get to those deeper issues. So just again, kind of stopping that thought process. And obviously you need that information as an attorney to kind of figure out, okay, well, this is we do a lot of criminal defense work. So this is the sentence that my client is facing. This is the, potential triable issues that we have. But again, at the end of the day, it might be, well, the most important thing to me is like my family's going to leave me if I don't like go get help and I don't seek, treatment for my addiction. That's really kind of where the pressure point is. And if you don't kind of go down that path, you're just getting the legal questions put out there about the case, then you really miss that most important piece. And therefore, clients kind of like, well, again, I know that attorney knows the law and seems very knowledgeable, but my biggest issue is still looming out there. So the next time, next person that they call on the list, that's kind of, not even talking about anything that's going on in the courthouse or how, did the police officer say XYZ to you at the roadside, but like, hey, what's the impact on your family? Boom. Now that person is the one that's getting hired because they recognize what the issue is.
Yeah, and I think even more to that point, it's the idea that when you talk to the person that way, I can't tell you the number of lawyers that have said to me, I can't stand it that I'm such an amazing lawyer. And I met with this person and I gave them all the secret sauce and I told them what the strategy is going to be. And I showed them how brilliantly I can help them solve the problem. And then I quoted the fee. All the air left out of the room. They turned a different color. They quickly scattered out. And then I find out from a colleague at the courthouse that they hired them and they charged them even more.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that really derives from the fact that even though we think it is logical, buying is emotional.
Yes.
People don't buy what they need. They buy what they want. And if you think that that's not true, I want you to look around the next Ruth Chris Steakhouse that you go to. No one needs Ruth Chris Steak, right? You might need sustenance. You might need to live, but you can live on ramen noodles. You're choosing steak because it's what you want.
Right.
So when you realize that you are giving people what they want, what you recognize is that all of the data, that information that you're kind of dumping on them is going to suppress their ability to make a decision because you know the statutes and the law and the process and the sentencing guidelines and all of the things that you're sharing with them. They don't know those things. And every time you divert them from the very linear path from problem to hire this lawyer solution to, oh, there's a sentencing option. I might get this. I might get that. Oh, here are some contingencies. I might have mitigating factors and aggravating factors. There might be witnesses, right? All of that information suppresses the emotion because it takes you into your rationality. So your goal is not to not have a substantive conversation. You are going to have a conversation about the framework of what the person is doing, but you're not going to give them legal advice. And people don't understand when I have this conversation with lawyers all the time. They're like, how can you have a consultation without legal advice? I'm like, it's very easy. I don't need to know what I'm going to argue in court to know that I can help you.
Right.
I know
exactly.
that anything in the field of family law, if you present it to me, sans a couple of areas that we don't touch, I am going to be able to help you, whether you're presenting something complex or simple, whether it's in one jurisdiction or another, whether there are 15 witnesses or only one witness, whether you have a defense or not, I know I can help you. All that I need to know for you and what you need to know is that I can help you. And you need to see that I am the solution to your problem. And that comes through you recognizing that there is an emotional component to this, you getting tapped into that. And then I offer you the solution that is alleviating the distress by virtue of having you sign on the line that's dotted. Not alleviating the distress by virtue of telling you all the things that are going to make it go away, because then I get you out of the fire to buy.
Right.
And then you get back into your rationality. You hear my price and you're like, oh my God, that's so much money I can't afford. And you shut down and then you go somewhere and think about it. And the next time somebody says, hey, it's time for us to make a buying decision after you've had that right conversation, you've now psychologically adapted yourself to that fee so that when they quote it, it doesn't feel quite so scary.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really, really powerful. I think that building in the experience that you're wanting to deliver to the clients really does start right there on the front end of things. And again, like you kind of alluded to with Ruth's Chris, you can go get a great steak at any grocery store, right? Like any local butcher shop is going to have some amazing slab of meat that you can go home and cook yourself. But that experience is something that is kind of what is driving the Ruth's Chris price point. It's about kind of being in that kind of elegant space, and the way that they talk to you, and they figure out before you come in why what you're celebrating, and then they add some sort of thing at the end to kind of deliver that top level experience. It really is a the service side of things versus the product is what is emphasized. And that, I think, is what we miss. We're all really good at delivering the legal product, and that, and we, because we're, those of us who think, oh gosh, I know everything that can go on in the courtroom, you get so intent on that legal product that you really do kind of take a step back from what is the most important thing to the client, which is the service itself. It's not to diminish the value of the legal product being top notch, but that service side of things is just critical. And kind of going to your kind of second point that you'd emphasized in terms of being that roadblock, you can't as a marketing company sell a law firm that isn't a good product, right? You can't go out and create a website that's going to sell this law firm if it's not a great law firm. What are some of the things that you focus on in terms of the brand development of a individual attorney or an individual law firm? You talked about kind of producing content and making that simple, just answering questions or putting putting snippets out there that the legal marketing company can then run with. But in terms of kind of brand identity, what factor does that play in terms of helping law firms grow?
Yeah, well, that's really about differentiating yourself from being a commodity, right? So I think a lot of people think that all that I have to do is talk about the law in a way that is exciting and sexy.
Right.
So they think if I put the right colors on my website, or, if I have a really great photo shoot, or if I am able to, highlight the fact that I won some award or that I had some victory in court, that's going to sell my legal service, right? And the challenge with that is that even though those are components of the totality of what a person consumes when they go to a website, that is nowhere near sufficient. And without those things, you can have something that's even more exceptional, right? So yes, there are certain scientific components, like things like, where is your call to action button in the top right-hand corner? And there's a reason for that based on where your mind in the visual field of a person is going to consume that content. Yes, you can have someone who is a competent digital marketing agency know the answers and be able to create that for you. But what is going to connect with people so that you don't become one of the many who can deliver the service, you are the one for them, is what you are saying to the person in the way that they are going to receive it. So that really is about the ideal client avatar. And that includes their demographics, their geographics, and their psychographics, right? So the demographics, I think people know, right? Those are the things that are external to the person, their age, their gender, their race, their household income, their parent status, all of those things. Like, you have to identify the right person. And then, of course, where are those people? You need those people to actually consume your message. But the psychographic piece of it is where I think a lot of us fall short. We don't ask, what does this person need to hear as the person that they are? Because if I'm communicating to a conservative white male in his 50s, I am probably going to say something different than a liberal white female in her 20s. I am probably going to say something different to a parent than a non-parent. I'm going to have a different messaging based on the fact that somebody hangs out at the country club and aspires to a more affluent lifestyle and to present themselves as such, versus someone who's in jeans and a t-shirt, no matter what their income, and they're hanging out at the local five and dime, right? there are differences in humans that are not right or wrong. They simply are. And if you don't connect with them, then your message may be intellectually astute. It may demonstrate your abilities. It may say to a person, this person has the aptitude to be able to help me, but it's not going to say, this is my person, right? They don't get me. They don't understand me. They don't resonate with me. And most people are not going to say that. They're simply going to click away. Or if they come in, they're only going to come in because you were the first message that they saw. So yes, there is some value to being, on the first page of Google and as high up as humanly possible and all of those things. But you don't want to churn and burn through a bunch of people seeing your message. You want to get the right people seeing your message in the right volume. And it becomes a lot easier when you are speaking who you are, what you are, who you want to serve and why to that audience, so that audience kind of cuts out the chatter of the overclouded marketplace and they see only you as the resource. And then that messaging has to be consistent across all the channels, right? From your social media to your website, certainly anything branded that you have, if you have any type of print media. And then you want to be speaking your message in some qualitative way through the intake process, through the consultation process, and even once a person becomes a client who can then refer more people like them who were ultimately inclined to go somewhere else. So you want to build your message, and you want your message to be eloquently stated repeatedly in every possible avenue where any potential client can consume it. And that really is about building it first in your mind and then working with the right type of agent to get it out of you. And sometimes when you're starting out on a smaller budget, that agent really is you, yourself, and you.
That's so right. That's so true. Yeah.
It's a team of three, me, myself, and I, right? You, yourself, and you-ha, right? It's the three of you. But, if you work with some resources like Simon Sinek's second book, the Find Your Why, right? I think a lot of us know start with why.
Yeah.
But he and his business manager actually wrote Find Your Why, which actually takes people through a process to analyze some of the stories of your childhood that motivate your current behavior so that you can understand at a deeper level, why am I doing this? Why am I an estate planning attorney? Why am I a civil litigator? Why am I a criminal defense attorney? And a lot of times it goes deeper than what we think it is. It's not just someone exposed me to it. It sounded interesting. I like to fight for the underdog. It could be a lot more to it. And when you start to collect those stories, then you can weave those stories into the narrative of who you are and who you serve in every venue that they can consume the message. It becomes a lot easier that way.
Yeah, I love that. I think that the the funny part about the me, myself, and I mentality is that you can actually outcompete. You can outdo your competitors on that front when you are just putting forth your brand in a way that is done with integrity. When it's something that the client can connect with and trust, all these awards and different, verdicts or, case outcomes, the different lists that you're a part of, whatever it might be, it's one of those things that, maybe makes us feel very good about ourselves, but clients' eyes are glazing over through all that. They could care less. But when you get on there and say, hey, I got a DWI when I was 21 years old. It was the worst mistake of my life. Here's the things that it impacted. This is the reason why I went to law school, because I felt like I was unjustly, treated by the officer, by the DA's office, whatever it might be. Once you've kind of put that story out there, it's like, well, man, this guy's going to go to bat. Like, I mean, this is personal, and it doesn't matter what all the awards and accolades and all of the other stuff is. It's all kind of bought into the reason that you went into it. So it can be done very cheaply, but at the same time really have a very powerful effect, because regardless of how much money, and you obviously can tell the story maybe sometimes better when you do have a little bit of a marketing budget. But if you're telling the story, I think it's something that is a lot simpler than we like to make it out to be. And it's also important, I think, that if there is something that is driving your practice, if there's a reason that you feel compelled to be in this particular practice area or to be in the law in general, that's something that you want to share that message with clients. And I think for whatever reason, we're not very good at that as lawyers. We're great storytellers in the courtroom when we get in front of a jury and tell our client's story, but we're not, we don't either think it's important or have thought through our own. And I think that's a huge advantage. So I love that. And I think, in terms of kind of your final kind of pressure point that you had talked about at the beginning of the call with regard to hiring and kind of that being such a difficult thing. I think so many attorneys, make a hire, they hire on an associate, or they hire on a legal assistant, and there's no process for doing that, right? It's just like, come in the office. I needed somebody yesterday. Good. You're in, you're ready to go. There's no training program. And within a couple of weeks, it's kind of like, there's this frustration of like, well, things aren't getting done. And, I this is a big mistake. And then maybe it works out after a couple of years, or maybe it doesn't. And they're like, well, forget that. I'm never hiring again. What does that kind of process look like for you guys in terms of starting point for somebody that's either getting ready to hire or has been frustrated with their hiring process in the past?
So hiring is one of my favorite things to talk about, because we just get it so wrong.
Right? Oh, it's bad.
Most of the time we wait to hire until we're already desperate,
on fire.
And we hire somebody this way. We bring them in and we say, all right, I need somebody who can draft motions. Can you draft motions? Yes. All right, check. I need somebody who can read, write, and speak the English language. Can you read, write, and speak the English language? Yes. Check. Right. And we go down the checklist and we say, all right, well, they seem like a nice person. They said they could do these things. All right, let's get them locked and loaded. And then we bring them in and we dump all of our work onto them. So we abdicate, we don't delegate. We dump our work on them, and then we're mystified that they don't know what the heck they're doing. So then we take it all back, right? So now we have twice the load that we otherwise would have had, because we had the psychological release of the work, and then we snatched it back. And then we're paying somebody for the privilege of doing nothing while we do their work, because we're not willing to train them. I mean, first of all, I know this lineage because I have done this myself. I don't like to admit that, but I was a chronic bad hirer. And then I finally got a hold of myself and I read a lot of different resources. I'll tell you, like, my absolute favorite was Who by Jeffrey Smart, who, by the way, ironically, is the brother of Bradley Smart, who wrote Top Grading.
Okay.
And I remember someone referred to me Top Grading, and I was like, oh my God, that's a big book. Words. I'm already overextended. I just need to hire somebody. So then someone said, well, look at Jeffrey's book. Jeffrey's is a little bit more reasonable. And it talked about creating scorecards, and that analogy made sense to me. But I then built out my own hiring system, and now we teach it here at Law Firm Mentor, which is you need to have at least 3 interviews. And you need to start with a screen. And the screen is not a long interview. The screen is, why did you apply? Why are you leaving where you are? Or why are you looking for another opportunity? And then you get to what are their strengths and weaknesses, and you ask behavioral questions to suss that out. And you would be surprised. We have eliminated probably 75% of the people that put their resume in, don't even get past the screening interview, because if somebody can't articulate for you what is a weakness that they have, and I'm not talking about the BS weakness of, I care about my clients too much, or, I just love to work so much that I give up my nights and weekends. Like, okay, stop blowing smoke up. Right? Like, hey, I'm talking about the real weakness. So I gave someone an example one time, and I said, here's an example of a weakness. I'm a litigator. I love to be in a courtroom. I'm great at writing when I get a chance to do it, but I don't get to do it that much because I'm always in a courtroom. So if I take on an appeal, I would be notoriously late with filing appeals, like notorious. I've never filed an appeal on time. I've never found an appeal that I like enough to write timely. So I told this one person, I said, let me give you an example of a weakness. My weakness is this issue. And one time I delayed filing so long that I got an administrative dismissal order in the mail. And of course, very quickly had my first heart attack, and I need to call my malpractice carrier. And I called a friend crying, and she said, take a deep breath, just call the appellate division, tell them what happened. They'll let you file it as within time, but you need to file it soon. So I banged out that appellate brief all weekend. And on Monday, called the appellate division and said, oh my God, I can't believe it. And they said, don't worry, just file a motion, file it with the brief, you'll be fine, which I was. But I didn't know that that was going to be the outcome, right?
Right.
That I had a crisis moment as a result of not getting a hold of myself. And that was something that I knew that I needed help with. So now I have staff to make sure that they harass me into meeting my deadlines. So I gave this person this example, and I said to her, now that you know what a real weakness is, can you give me an example of a weakness? And she said, I've never done anything like that. So first I was like, all right, I hear judgment in that.
Yeah,
I was like, it's not really great for you to be judgmental toward your future boss, but that's a whole other conversation. But she couldn't give me an answer. And I said, well, I want to thank you at this point for your time, and I wish you well in your search. And she said, well, but I thought we had a great conversation, and like, why am I being eliminated? I said, here's the thing. This job requires introspection because you're going to make mistakes practicing law. Absolutely. I don't want someone who will not make mistakes. I want someone who will own the mistake, right? Recognize where they are inclined to make mistakes so that we can add additional support to prevent those mistakes from harming our clients. And if your mindset is you are so perfect that you don't make mistakes, I know that that's not true. If you don't know that that's not true, you lack the introspection we require. If you do know that it's true and you're lying to me and you're not willing to be open because you're performing, then you have some mindset issues. Either way, this is not a fit, right? So you can eliminate people by virtue of having the right mentality around what you're looking for. And sometimes it's in what they say, sometimes it's in what they won't say.
Yes.
But
yeah.
we help our clients to dial that in very, very clearly at all stages, right? So there's a 3-step process: the screen, the first in-person interview, and in-person can be on Zoom, depending on what you're doing with your law firm, right? Post-COVID world. And then, of course, the final one is the in-person with the owner / manager / person that will ultimately supervise. And that oftentimes requires a cross-checking of information. That's where you're going to be sussing it out. That's where you're going to be doing a role play so the person can actually demonstrate. Can they cross-examine on the fly? Can they give an oral argument on the fly? All right. How quickly can they analyze documents if that's what they're going to do? Let's role play what it is to get on the phones if you're going to be a receptionist. You have them show that they can do the work. And by virtue of creating that system and really working that system, now we added in assessments. But when I first got to that point, our team got a lot better. And then when we added in the layer of having an assessment tool that actually helps me to look under the hood of a person, our team got exceptionally better. Now I love every human being that I employ. I consider myself very lucky in both of my companies that I have such a great team, but it isn't because I am just such a great person. It's because I know what I'm looking for, and I look for it very strategically and consistently, and I don't deviate from the process. The process will work whether I need to hire next week or I need to hire yesterday.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that, that's such a critical piece for anybody that is, on their first hire or their 50th, to have that process in place as much as can be had, and really to get thoughtful about it. Because again, as time consuming as it may sound to have, 3 interviews or, require some lengthy cover letter or do assessments, all of these different kind of, places where you can potentially eliminate somebody, the cost of not having that in place and getting the wrong person on the team, and how much emotional energy is going to go into that over the course of, a week, nonetheless 5 years, it's going to be massive. I mean, it's going to be a massive amount of time. So I think it's just so critical. And that was something for me that really, I was in the Wild West of hiring for probably the first 5 to 7 years of doing that, before it was just kind of like, oh, there is, it's not just a complete guessing game. There's actually some things that we can put into place that will allow for that. So I love all of those tips. Appreciate so much, Allison, all of the information that you shared. If anybody is interested in kind of the courses that you offer, or coaching or attending one of the workshops, what's the best place for them to find out more about that?
Well, the Bible on all things Law Firm Mentor can be found on our website, lawfirmmentor.net. And if you really want to understand what we stand for and how we help people, the best way I always tell people is to check out our podcast, the Crushing Chaos with Law Firm Mentor podcast. We're on all of the major platforms, including YouTube and TikTok. So check us out there. You can learn more. And I'm always happy to hop on a call and talk to people about what it is that they're trying to accomplish.
I love that. Well, definitely check out Allison's podcast and website. And again, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all this.
All right. Thanks for having me.
If you found the information in this podcast to be valuable, I simply ask that you pay it forward and share this podcast with another member of the legal community. Also, if you would leave us a rating or a review on whatever platform you are listening on, I would greatly appreciate it.